So welcome. I think we're about to start. It'd be nice if you could come forward to the seats down here. Good. As folks get settled, I'm Anne Forsyth, and I'm here to welcome you to the Graduate School of Design. I'm a professor of urban planning here and director of the Masters of Urban Planning program. And most important, over the past 2 years at Harvard have led 3 courses dealing with gateway cities, working both with planning students and with students in law and business. And some of the results of the planning students' work will be on exhibition at the reception in the portico rooms at the other end of this ground floor level after the main part of the session today. I've been working closely with the Joint Center for Housing Studies as chair of the Faculty Advisory Committee. And it's been a real pleasure to be affiliated with such an important group on campus who help to frame debates nationally about, and even perhaps internationally, about issues of housing policy, housing finance, housing design and planning. And now I'm just going to hand over to the terrific director of the Joint Center for Housing Studies, Eric Belsky. I'm in a way filling in for him today as he teaches on Friday afternoons, and there's no way I can fill Eric's shoes, so I'm glad he's here to start us off.
Thanks, Anne, and good afternoon to everyone. I want to add my welcome to Anne's for all of you being here this afternoon. Obviously, Friday afternoons are competing with a lot of other things that you might otherwise be doing, and I think it speaks to the value of the topic and the subject and the cities, the actual places we're here to talk about today that so many people have attended. It's nice to see so many old friends in the group and some new friends that we hope we make along the way. This is, of course, an event that is about a very important policy issue here in the state of Massachusetts, which is a whole series of cities that are outside of Boston itself that have a whole series of both incredible assets but also special challenges as a result of their histories and as a result of the state of economic development in a number of places. So it really is an important topic for the Commonwealth that, again, we're here to talk about. We have a very broad cross-section of people in the audience who come from different universities. We have faculty from different universities and students from different universities, but we also have a lot of people who are community advocates, work in business, who are policymakers and in government. It's always wonderful when you have that kind of richness, especially when we get to the questions and answers, and we will make sure we leave time in each panel for those questions and answers. I want to make sure I thank all the organizations that helped sponsor this event and helped us promote it and let people know that it was happening. That's the Graduate School of Design, where we are currently, so it's in our own house. The Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. We'll hear a little bit about some of the related work that the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston is doing on working cities on the first panel. CHAPA, the Citizens Housing and Planning Association, really an incredible resource in the state of Massachusetts. MACDC, another incredible organization that represents community development corporations across the state. We're blessed with a rich, dense set of terrific community-based organizations and representatives of them. Public and private partnerships as well, MassINC, and the Boston Area Research Initiative here at Harvard, and the Rappaport Institute for Greater Boston, and the Taubman Center, of which it's a part. So we have really a terrific group. I also want to make sure I call out some people who did extra work in planning this. We have talked about varieties of partnerships, but you never plan an event like this without a lot of partners. It takes a village. Anne Forsyth is one of those people, and you'll hear from her today. She'll be, in a sense, a master of ceremonies. It's going to wrap up the day. She's a very insightful person, so I think you're in for a treat when she tries to draw together the threads into a fabric and something that's richly woven, which I think she'll do. I don't want to put you under too much pressure there, Ann, but I know you'll do it. Joe Kriesberg from MACDC, who's going to moderate one of the panels, Brenda Clement, who's going to moderate one of the panels from CHAPA, and David Luberoff, our own good friend who is involved with the Boston Area Research Initiative and a longtime observer of the political scene, the economic scene in Boston. And these are some of the people who will make up what I think are a remarkable group of panelists that we have today, moderators and panelists and speakers. And I'll introduce our keynote speaker in a moment. But I also want to basically say that, you know, what we're here to do is really have I think, a frank conversation about gateway cities. I've participated in all the planning calls with the panels, and I think what will distinguish this is an effort to really say, you know, what's going on in gateway cities, but also what are the challenges around actually defining goals. You know, what are the objectives that different cities want to achieve, and what are some of the political challenges in setting those goals. Of course, there's a variety of different things you could try to do to change gateway cities, to build on their assets, to try to spark a development process that will be self-reinforcing, but those things all have consequences, and so I hope that we'll have a rich conversation about that. We want to talk also, though, as well about how you go about actually making change in the gateway cities, and again, towards what end, but how do we try to create really rich, vibrant communities on the rich, vibrant communities that are already there, but that have stronger economic growth, have more housing options for people, greater connectivity than they currently have. And lastly, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that we're on Twitter. And so I hope I get this right. We're at #GatewayCities, all one word. And I guess it would be redundant. They wrote out hashtag, and there's a hashtag, so I don't think it's hashtag. It's just hashtag. There you go. So, all right. So that's the extent of my my social media sophistication. And you can also follow us on the web, and you'll see that in the program. We have a housing-based blog, and all our reports and other announcements about events that we have are up on there. But now I get the really distinct honor to introduce a good friend of mine, the Undersecretary for Housing and Community Development in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Aaron Gornstein. I can kind of go through some of Aaron's biographic details. Let me start by saying, though, that he oversees about $1 billion of funding that flows to communities across Massachusetts. He serves as the primary advisor on housing issues in the executive branch of the Commonwealth, including for the governor. And he has a very rich background from my perspective, having spent 12 years as the executive director of CHAPA, and in that capacity, having really thought about all the issues that matter to the state of Massachusetts around housing, how to try to improve the quality of housing, the quality of communities, working in partnership with a very wide range of constituents. It's no surprise that the governor eventually tapped his shoulder because he's been so well regarded for so long. And I would say, and hasten to add, because a lot of the work I do is at the federal level, Aaron is really a shining star in the firmament, not just in the state of Massachusetts, but nationally as well. And some of the policies and programs that we have come to rely upon at the federal level are policies and programs that Aaron helped craft or has helped improve in very meaningful and very strategic ways. On top of all of that, what I didn't know, he was at one point a planner for the city of Cambridge. That had to be an interesting experience, and you'll have to say which you're getting more battle scars from, being an active, engaged planner out in the world or running a major part of the state government. But I can say that there's very few people that I come across that are as skilled, as knowledgeable, as experienced, as humanistic, and really as principled as Aaron is. So we're really, really fortunate in this state to have Aaron in the position that he is and in the things that he's done before he came here. So having now thoroughly embarrassed you, Aaron, I'll bring you up. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. You did embarrass me, but I appreciate the introduction. And I just have incredible respect and admiration for Eric and his leadership at the Joint Center. Not only do we rely on Eric for his national expertise, and he is the go-to person that we rely on for analysis and all sorts of things, but we appreciate that, Eric, that you're so actively involved in Massachusetts and the city of Boston right here and really helping us all out with your expertise there. So thank you so much. So the focus on revitalization of the gateway cities in Massachusetts is only 7 years old. That means many of you have been involved literally from the beginning. For others, particularly students here today in the audience, this topic may be relatively new. Massachusetts, I believe, is in the vanguard nationally with New York and its upstate legacy cities in seeing and investing in the future of these older industrial cities. In many ways, seeing the future is what gives us high hopes for the gateway cities. What many organizations represented here today saw 7 years ago was not just cities with difficult challenges, but those with huge potential. Of course, the problem wasn't new in 2007. Since the 1970s, as you know, the older industrial cities in Massachusetts were widely seen as being in decline. Once an integral part of the regional economies, they were fast losing jobs, population, and vitality, and in many cases, rising crime rates and underperforming schools and a lack of amenities made them unattractive to younger families, thereby exacerbating their decline. Well, MassINC and others around that time named and recast the issues facing these cities, helping to create a new identity and a unity among them, and most importantly, a new policy direction for us. 7 years later, I would say that we're in a second stage of thinking about the gateway cities. The first stage started with the MassINC report and ended with the state officially providing gateway cities with a distinct status. The second stage is creating and experimenting with new strategies to revitalize those cities. I'm going to focus on our work in the Housing and Economic Development Secretariat, but realizing that the gateway cities and their needs go far beyond that to issues like education and workforce development and safety and public health. All of those factors, not just the physical improvements, are essential to making cities attractive places for people of all income levels, ages, and family status. So I want to start by briefly summarizing how we got to the point that practitioners and elected officials alike have embraced the idea that gateway cities deserve a priority and a distinct set of strategies. First, MassINC and the Brookings Institution deserve tremendous credit for their influential report in 2007 that I referred to. The report made such an impact because it named the problem literally and analytically. By pulling together the 11 mid-sized cities that anchor regional economies, MassINC made the case for gateway cities as a distinct and important state priority. Around the same time, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the work of CHAPA. You've heard of that organization. And I was the executive director there at the time. And CHAPA and MACDC, which Eric mentioned, Joe Kriesberg's heading, did a joint study on the 38 smaller cities in Massachusetts and reached similar conclusions to MassINC. In addition, at that time, there was the Pioneer Institute, the Mass Smart Growth Alliance, and many mayors and local neighborhood-based groups that were advocating for this approach. On the political side, the Mayor's Compact was signed. Representative Cabral and Senator Bonaconti formed the Legislative Gateway Caucus in 2008. On the policy development side, UMass Dartmouth launched its urban initiative and issued a series of studies and plans. And the very first Gateway Cities Conference was held in October 2008. So that's the 2-minute history of gateway cities over the past 7 years. Governor Patrick got behind the idea of this distinct gateway city strategy when he announced that $1.35 million would be awarded to 18 cities to develop neighborhood plans. The Gateways Plus Action Grants in November of 2008, which DHCD managed, resulted in many valuable implementation activities that continue to this day. The special status of gateway cities was first recognized legislatively in 2009 in the Economic Development legislation, which defined gateway cities for the purposes of a program to retain manufacturing. That definition was amended a year later in 2010, resulted in recognizing what are now the 26 gateway cities. The legislature broadened the definition by using a quantitative threshold based on population, income, and educational attainment. So I'm suggesting right now that we're in a second stage, and that is developing and experimenting with strategies and tools that can lead to significant revitalization. I think experimenting is apropos, a useful term, because we're in an era where most public initiatives start by testing ideas before significant state and federal investments are made. So let me outline some of the principal ways in which the state housing and community development policy has been addressing the gateway cities' challenges. First is infrastructure. Recognizing that major infrastructure investments are required to redevelop the gateway cities, Secretary Bielecki established a goal of spending at least 50% of the MassWorks money on gateway cities. So MassWorks is our primary program for making discretionary infrastructure grants. And it was created by the Secretary and by the Governor by combining 6 programs that had been separate into one. And since that time, MassWorks has invested more than $180 million in 101 projects across the Commonwealth. And I'm pleased to say an average of 51% has gone to the gateway cities. Let me give you a few examples of where and how we're spending that money. In Brockton, $15 million is funding the redevelopment of an entire block downtown near the commuter rail station. The Enterprise Block's private developer, Trinity Financial, has started on 55,000 square feet of new commercial space and the construction of 113 units of new mixed-income housing. Right nearby, a recent DHCD-funded affordable housing development is now fully occupied called Station Lofts, rented up very quickly. MassWorks has also supported the first 2 phases of Worcester's City Square, reconnecting the urban fabric and triggering significant private investment. That private development will include a 150-room hotel and a mixed-use project with 350 market-rate housing units and 50,000 square feet of retail space. So that's infrastructure. The second policy I want to focus on is market rate and affordable housing. And I'm intentionally putting those together. A key issue facing most of the gateway cities has been increasing the income and housing diversity in their cities, particularly in the downtowns. To address that issue, the legislature created a carefully tailored market rate housing program called the Housing Development Incentive Program, or HDIP. HDIP provides a 10% state income tax credit and local real estate tax incentives when developers substantially rehab buildings and create new market rate housing. In order to get the credits, the municipality must agree to exempt between 10% and 100% of the incremental value of the residential improvements for at least 5 years. HDIP also requires the cities to establish a zone for market rate development. That allows the developers to then come in and apply to us for state credits. So in less than 2 years, 9 gateway cities have established such zones, and more are in the pipeline. The first project is complete in Chelsea, and the second is under construction in Pittsfield. 2 more projects have gotten DHCD's preliminary approval, and we expect a steady flow from here. While we're supporting market rate housing production in the gateway cities, it's absolutely critical for us to continue investing in affordable housing for low and moderate income residents who currently live in these cities. One of our 4 affordable housing priorities, in fact, is to invest in these neighborhoods where the projects have a strong likelihood of catalyzing private investment improving housing quality and promoting occupancy at a range of incomes. This type of investment has both immediate and long-range implications for strengthening our cities and improving the lives of the citizens there. There are many notable examples of affordable housing investments in the gateway cities, triggering later private investment in market rate housing and economic development. And let me run through a few of those. One is in Haverhill, where there's been a housing renaissance that started in its smart growth district with an affordable housing project called the Cordovan. That led to Hamel Lofts, and then the Hayes at Railroad Square, an award-winning mixed income building with first floor retail. In last fall's MassWorks rounds, I mentioned the infrastructure program, Haverhill received a $4 million award to support an ambitious plan for a new 50-unit mixed income development on the other side of its Merrimack Street corridor. Another example, which you'll be hearing about, is the Box District in Chelsea. After the neighborhood developers completed Janus Highlands and Boxworks, Mitchell Properties completed Atlas Lofts. These affordable rental and homeownership projects triggered market rate investments in other developments, like the Standard Box, which is 21 affordable and 24 market rate units, and the Flats at 44, which is all market rate. So this comprehensive plan for the redevelopment of the Box District, in turn, led the MBTA to propose a new Silver Line station there. DHCD has also made substantial investments in the city of Lowell, in the Mills, located on the edge of the downtown business district. Successful for-profit developers like Trinity, Wind Development, and Joseph Mullins have used our tax credit program and subsidy funds to create over 500 mixed-income, high-quality residential units and commercial retail space in these abandoned and underutilized mill structures located on the Lowell Canals and the Merrimack River. The rehab mills have completely changed the area in which they're located. A new Riverwalk now circles part of the downtown near the mills, and new retail has been opened in this neighborhood. All the units are now fully occupied, and of course, there's waiting list to get into the affordable housing. So I talked about infrastructure, housing development, and the third area is the greening of our gateway cities. In 2007, Governor Patrick created the Gateway Cities Parks Program to make targeted investments to provide park and recreational opportunities. The program was created in recognition of the fact that public parks are essential to the health and well-being of urban areas, and cities often lack the resources to plan and develop them. So we've provided about $50 million to cities to restore or create clean, safe places for children and families to enjoy. 2 weeks ago, the administration announced a new Gateway Cities tree planting program that will reduce energy use in targeted urban neighborhoods. As a pilot, we're investing $5 million to plant 15,000 new trees in Chelsea, Holyoke, and Fall River in the next 18 months. The gateway cities, because of their density and manufacturing history, have less tree canopy cover than many urban areas. There are a host of programs that are not necessarily specifically for the gateway cities, but in fact greatly benefit them. I've talked about the programs specifically targeted to the 26 gateway cities. Now let me touch on some other initiatives because I think it's important to see them as well. One is our homeless prevention and rehousing initiative, recognizing that some of the highest homeless rates are in the gateway cities. We've attempted through increased funding to help individuals and families exit shelter or avoid having to come into shelter in the first place. And for the first time in 24 years, the state has greatly expanded this rental assistance voucher program, providing close to 2,000 mobile vouchers and 700 project-based vouchers. Second, in May 2008, the Patrick administration launched its Brownfields Support Team, coordinating local, state, and federal remediation at the most complex cleanup sites. 2/3 of the sites are in the gateway cities. In March, we announced $3 million in community investment tax credits, which were awarded to 38 CDCs, including over 25% serving the gateway cities, and I'm sure you'll hear more about the CITC program as well. The credits will be used to attract donors who support housing and community development projects initiated by these nonprofit organizations. As you know, the gateway cities were among the hardest hit by the foreclosure crisis. Between 2009 and 2011, we targeted a large proportion of our $70 million in neighborhood stabilization program, that's federal funding, for neighborhood stabilization in the gateway cities. NSP was a great program. It no longer exists, we're out of the funding. But we targeted specific properties to turn around, to acquire and rehab that would have huge strategic value. And I think it's just made an enormous difference in those cities. We are keeping it going through support from the Attorney General's office, through her settlement funds. But those funds are almost out. But there's still a need, even with the diminishment of the foreclosure crisis, that we see in pockets, the need to continue that work. I also want to mention that Mass Housing and MHP, or Mass Housing Partnership, have provided mortgages to approximately 6,000 first-time homebuyers in the gateway cities since 2009, representing about 11% of the market share of those cities. So clearly, our first-time homebuyer programs, working in conjunction with our development work, is helping a great deal. And last year, the Federal Reserve in Boston joined with the Commonwealth and a number of nonprofit partners to initiate the Working Cities Challenge, and Prabal will talk about that. In January, there were 6 winners chosen, 5 of them gateway cities, for their innovative community development ideas. So we've made important gains that I've outlined, but we know the tools and the resources devoted to these cities must continue to grow and expand. The gateway cities remain a key priority for the governor, as shown by his 2014 Economic Development Bill, which he just released. It's one of the few places in our tight state budget where he is proposing significant new state funding. The governor's bill contains 3 pieces I wanted to mention with regard to gateway cities. The first is the new Transformative Development Fund, say that fast 3 times, to be managed by Mass Development and initially capitalized at $15 million. The fund's primary mission is to identify and invest equity in transformative projects in these cities. These would be projects that Mass Development controls, possibly with joint venture partners. Although Mass Development is usually seen as a lender, it has an extensive track record as a developer. A great example is 1550 Main Street in downtown Springfield, which Mass Development purchased in 2009 as part of a strategy to revitalize the Main Street corridor. Along with a $3 million state grant, Mass Development invested $11 million to purchase the building and do a comprehensive rehab that improved its public spaces and modernized the building. Mass Development brought in new tenants that have further improved the property. It just received an award from BOMA, Building Owners and Managers Association, for that project. In addition to the equity investments, the agency will be able to use the new fund to create collaborative workspaces that will nurture innovation in the gateway cities. Mass Development will have the flexibility to lend or provide grants on a large or small scale to help with these projects. Finally, Mass Development will be able to use this fund for technical assistance to the gateway cities. In particular, it would help to provide staff in the cities to help build local capacity, and we hear that often about the need for staff capacity. A second significant proposal in the Economic Development Bill that was released last week is an expansion of the Housing Development Incentive Program. That's the HDIP program I mentioned earlier on. The law right now contains a 50-unit cap on the program. And that has really prevented the renovation, I think, of mill projects and other more larger scale renovations that we typically see as opportunities. The governor's bill would eliminate the cap and double the state credit available to support projects of any size. I think that change, if it's made, will increase the activity that we'll see under HDIP. And finally, the bill includes an additional $10 million for the Brownfields Redevelopment Fund, a crucial program, again, not just for the gateway cities, but having a disproportionate impact there, I think. So to finish up, I think the challenges of the gateway cities remain formidable, particularly in the poorest neighborhoods. I mentioned not really out of the foreclosure crisis in some of these neighborhoods. The Great Recession was just a major blow. These cities fell faster and deeper than other parts of the state. We're still trying to come out of that. Nevertheless, I just want to highlight the progress we've made in recent years. And that's what I've tried to do. But the list of gateway cities with significant development, adding jobs and homes, is growing. Market rate housing is being built in these cities that have rarely seen private investment in recent years. Affordable housing, as I mentioned, has catalyzed neighborhood revitalization and downtown revitalization. In part, this occurred because of the new policies and tools, but it largely occurred, I think, and will continue to happen because of the potential that the gateway cities have. That's what I started out saying, that the assets that many organizations here today who are on the panel saw in 2007 are increasingly recognized and valued by individuals and families who are making choices about where to work, where to live, and how to get between where they work and live. Employers are increasingly following their employees and becoming more urban. The gateway cities have things that are now in demand: walkable downtowns and neighborhoods, transit connections, historic and architecturally significant buildings, and strong local institutions. But the biggest reason that I remain optimistic is the incredible leadership and talent that is represented by the people you'll be hearing from on the panel discussions and by the attendees here today. It's the partnerships that you have forged that have moved the agenda forward. There's incredible patience and persistence among the practitioners and policymakers here in Massachusetts. And I just am optimistic that that's going to continue moving forward. So I look forward to continuing to work with all of you so that we can build on just the impressive progress and initiative that have been started so that we could keep that going in the years ahead. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, we are. So I would like to thank the Undersecretary for some really important insights into past activities and the future potential of gateway cities. And we do have a little while for questions. And I see David Luberoff has stepped up to the mic.
You know me. I like
well, this isn't going to be a softball. I know it. It's not from David. Hi, David.
Hi, Aaron. Since your list struck me as somewhat, didn't sound like you had enough to do. No, I was struck at the beginning of your talk. You noted that there are at least two other legs on this stool. One being the question of schools, and the other public safety. And at least many of the gateway cities are still quite challenged in those areas. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the extent to which there is or might be collaboration among your colleagues in other state agencies around the possibility of a coordinated strategies that take on the work that you're doing in some coordination with schools and a myriad of public safety challenges, including the challenge of returning citizens coming back from some of the state correctional institutions.
Well, I know the governor is focused very much on the schools, and in terms of funding, particularly their specific programs focused on the gateway cities. In terms of our secretariat, we're coordinating most closely, I would say, with transportation and with environmental affairs. Jen Murphy, who's the Assistant Secretary for Gateway Cities, does interact with all the state agencies that are involved in the gateway cities, including the Department of Education. I can't say I could go into detail on those initiatives, but I know that, and I'm not personally involved in them, I have been impressed actually what's happening at the local level, and I do see that this is being addressed certainly by community development agencies more and more in trying to work with the local schools and certainly around safety issues. So I think we need to do more at the state level for sure, but I think part of it is supporting really what I think is pretty robust work going on at the neighborhood level and local level in the communities where they are bringing those different stakeholders together. We've certainly seen in the broader redevelopment projects where that has happened more frequently. So I think that's, you've pinpointed an area that certainly needs more attention, I would say, and is not sort of centrally in our coordinating strategy that I focused on in my remarks. But I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yes, I think we'll just take one more question, so would you? I think we are being webcast, so it helps to be on the microphone.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Kim Fielding, and I'm a current resident of Fall River, Massachusetts. And I came all the way to Boston here just to be here. My question is, you talked about transit connections being one of the better points to cities, and that may be true in some cities like Haverhill. Also, part of, and you talked about walkable downtowns, but gateway cities tend to have more than sort of the mother lode of projects that are sort of making it more difficult for economic development, like the courthouse downtown, or a trash receptacle up on Airport Road, or maybe a casino. So in the face of these things where people are taking sort of, leaders are taking sort of just, grasping for the next best thing to do while we're waiting for things to develop, can you talk a little bit more about how we can sort of put some pressure on some of the gaps before we see these next waves of development actually reaching places like Fall River?
Okay, so there's, on the transportation issue first, obviously a South Coast Rail is something that's been a huge priority. So,
yeah.
But you're right, it's not that we're pinning everything on rapid transit and creating development opportunities, because you're right, not every one of the gateway cities does have access to that. We want to look at transportation more broadly. And I think transit-oriented development is certainly a focus of ours, but it's not the only thing we're doing for sure. So I think broadly looking at transportation is important, and we certainly are focused on Fall River and New Bedford in terms of bringing public transportation there. In terms of, I think in answer to your second question, I guess I would say the best thing to do is really to have a comprehensive plan that the city undertakes. And that's what we've been trying to support and promote and provide the technical assistance to do through our various, not just DHCD, but our quasi-public agencies as well. And I know that Barbara Fields at HUD is certainly promoting that through the sustainable communities and other areas. So really looking broadly, trying to look ahead 5 to 10 years on how to plan for growth, where the opportunities would be, so you can get ahead of the curve. And it seems like what you're suggesting is that we need more of that kind of attention, particularly in your city. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Well, I'd actually like to stop it there, and that's music to a planner's ears to hear that the solution is more comprehensive planning. We always like that. So thank you very much for very insightful comments.